Wicked Weatherman here, Pete Lovasco, with your Wicked Weather radio show, and I have a great guest for you tonight. I'm still waiting for her to call in. Chicago Windler will be with us shortly, I'm hoping. I just want to thank our sponsors tonight, and thanks everybody that still has power in Gloucester and wherever you're listening from. We had some wild weather. We'll definitely talk about that. But first, I want to thank Fort Williams Henry up in Lake George, New York, and I want to thank Rolling Hills Asylum. And so I have Chicago Windler, and let me see if we have her now. Enjoy the show, guys.
Hey there, how's it going?
Hello, you're on with Wicked Weather with Pete Lovasco. Who am I speaking with?
Of course, it's Chicago. How's it going?
Chicago, how are you, honey? I always wanted to know what the change was when you moved from New England down to Austin, Texas, right?
Yep, that's where I am. Well, the biggest change is I adore the accent in New England, and you don't hear anybody parking the car down here in Texas. Instead, everyone's y'all.
I know. I was going to say I didn't live down there, but I have family down in Plano. So yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that y'all. But you haven't been down there too long, right?
I've been here about a year and a half, but I've kind of been all over the place. I left Boston back in '06 to go and work in the Arctic tundra of Minnesota, which is totally, I think it's totally under the radar. People don't realize how amazing the Twin Cities are until you get there. So
right.
I worked in the Twin Cities, in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Then I worked in Indianapolis, and now I'm here in Austin. I pretty much decided I'm not going to go any further south. I'm done.
Yeah. So you were up here. You want to explain to the viewers out there and the listeners, how long were you? All right. Actually, my question for you is I'm sorry, we're just getting our power back up. We had some pretty wild weather up here tonight, but we'll probably talk about that later on. But I want to know more about you. I was really intrigued with everything that you did, and watching you on Channel 7 doing the weather. It was just great seeing you guys all together doing the weather forecast. So I thought you were really awesome, Chicago.
Oh, thanks.
And I want to know what actually got you into weather. What first, when you started growing up, let's say, was there an event that got you into the weather forecasting that you wanted to, pick up through school years? Did you have a crazy experience as far as weather goes? Yeah,
most definitely. I grew up in Oklahoma, which is the heart of Tornado Alley. And not only was it just, day in and day out, knowing, okay, there could be severe thunderstorms, there could be tornadoes today. But I'd say for me, it was when I was in 7th grade, there was a tornado that hit right across the street from middle school. And I remember that day, unlike the usual tornado drills, there was an actual, tornado sirens went off, and we all sheltered inside the school, and then they finally gave the all clear. And when I was riding the school bus on the way home, the gas station that was catty corner away from my school, the awning from the top of the gas station had been ripped back, and there was some debris in the fields. And, when something like that happens so close to you, it's something you never forget. And in my instance, I decided, I don't want to be afraid of storms. So instead, I kind of dedicated my life to trying to figure out as much as possible about them. And then here, just to kind of bring things full circle, my childhood hometown was Moore, Oklahoma. So as we know, that's basically been the EF5 magnet of the United States. And my mom and dad still live there. Back, last May, whenever that tornado hit, the school, my elementary school that I went to was Plaza Towers, which was destroyed. That's where 7 children unfortunately lost their lives. My childhood home was flattened. My mom and dad now live across town, so they were really fortunate. 3 doors away from their house was where the total destruction began. If they had just been, 50 yards closer to that path, they would have been in real trouble. Instead, they were really lucky. They had windows and a roof and, fence down and that kind of thing, but they were back up to normal in no time. So even now when you go back there and see just the power of Mother Nature, it really kind of brings it home to you. And the way I ended up in New England is I was always looking for, an exciting place to forecast weather. So I graduated from the University of Oklahoma with a BS in meteorology and a BA in journalism. Went from there to Norfolk, Virginia, which was a great place to get started because of all of the hurricanes that hit the Mid-Atlantic. Yep. Then I went to Dallas, Texas. After Dallas, I was in D.C. From D.C., I went up the coast to Boston. And that's how I ended up at WHDH, Channel 7.
So Boston was your last stop on the list, and then they sent you close to the Alamo.
Not close to the Alamo. We're at least an hour and a half from the Alamo, so there.
Oh, okay. So not that far. Okay. Well, wow, growing up, listen to that story, tornadoes down in Oklahoma. Yeah, I mean they really have some crazy weather down there in Chicago. It's been apparently quiet so far this year down in Oklahoma as compared to up here in New England of all places. What is causing that? Do you think it's just the weather pattern, the way the jet stream's set up and stuff like that?
I think so. For one, it was a super wacky winter. And now this summer has been extremely quiet. One of the National Weather Service offices down here in Texas tweeted out a couple of days ago the number of tornado warnings issued by each forecast office so far. And it's amazing to think that, I think it was Midland, Texas, has had more tornado warnings than Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, which is just insane because typically Oklahoma would be, the epicenter of all things severe. But I guess maybe it's also a good thing. I went back for the 1-year anniversary of that EF5 that hit more. And so many people there who were recovering were just on edge. They saw what could happen firsthand. They had rebuilt. They were just still trying to recover, and they were scared. Next time the severe weather threatens, they were just going to take it so much more seriously. So maybe it's good that they've gotten a break. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I've witnessed maybe a tornado on my travels down to Tampa, Florida, when I lived down there for a year or two. And that was going through the Carolinas. And, it's completely sunny out, and they say the system goes over the radio, it's a tornado warning or a tornado watch. And I'm like, I'm loving it because, I'm a weather enthusiast, weather freak. So this is great. It's like I'm moving to Florida, and I'm just chasing down 95 or 75 North Carolina, and then you see a statey come behind us and start speaking through the systems. The tornado coming, pull over. I'm like, no. So I watched I think it was about 100, 200 yards up. You can see the tall pines because they have tall pines down there. You can see the top swaying, and there it goes right across about 200 yards in front of me and went right across the highway. So that was pretty interesting. And then I think I saw another one in Tampa, but I couldn't tell. I think it was just the wind that blew up a lot of dust on the train tracks, but you could see a lot of lightning as well. But I wasn't really sure if that was a tornado or not. But as far as experiencing what you've experienced, no, I've never experienced that, not in my lifetime. It's got to be crazy. I have a friend who moved out to Oklahoma. Actually, I think it's believed it's southwest of Oklahoma City. So she's always hit me on Facebook if any warnings or watches come up. So I try to help her out the best I can. But so let's get back to you. So the Oklahoma tornado got you all into wanted to study weather, become a meteorologist. Where did you go about it from there?
Well, I was really, really fortunate that when I was always a good student in school. So when I was a junior in high school, I was applying for scholarships to try and finance my education. And one of the scholarships was sponsored by KOTV in Tulsa, which is the CBS station there. And so I go in for my interview for the scholarship, and, there's a big boardroom table with all these bigwigs from local companies in Tulsa. One of those was the general manager from KOTV at the time. They asked me, so why do you want to be a meteorologist? And, because I want to figure out how to predict tornadoes. I want to learn more about these storms. And they said, so, how do you think you're going to do this? I said, well, I want to go to the University of Oklahoma because they've got the best program in the world. They, if there's anything to be known about severe storms, they're researching it there. And apparently my bluffing or, boasting or whatever you want to call it resounded with the GM at the TV station, because after the interview he said, hey, do you want to come to the TV station and come chat with me? And And I said, absolutely. So not only did I end up winning the scholarship, but I also ended up, being able to go and check out the TV station and meet the chief meteorologist. So I take my tour of the station. I'm sitting in the general manager's office, and he said, so I know you're going into your senior year in high school, and then after that you're going to go to college. He said, so what do you do for work right now? I said, well, I shelve books at the Broken Arrow Public Library. How much do they pay you there? I said, I make $6 an hour. And he said, well, why don't you come work for us, and I'll pay you $6.50 an hour. Of course my jaw dropped. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I actually was I call it being a paid weather gopher. At the time, it was before we had these awesome street-level maps where you could zoom in and zoom out to all of the storms and see the storm tracks. This was back when it was a lot more, maps on TV were a lot more simple. So what I ended up doing is they paid me $6.50 an hour to go in and do county-by-county maps where I would basically put on the interstate shields, and I would label different towns on these maps so that anytime storms hit, we would already have that map database handy. And then I would also babysit storms, because this was before, you get your weather alert on your smartphone now. Well, this was back in the day when there would just be this machine that would beep, 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 and it was really annoying, but that's how you would know there was a warning. And so if the meteorologist was going to go home and get some rest, and a warning happened, he had to hightail it back into the station. So if there was ever kind of a marginal day where they're like, we think we're okay, but we're not sure, I would stay at the station until 3 a.m., babysitting radar. If storms got bad enough, then I was the one who would call and wake up the meteorologist at home and say, you need to get back in here, and then he'd go on the air. So that's kind of where it all began for me. It was pretty cool.
That's awesome. I would love to have experience something like that, to be able to wake up a meteorologist, and say, all right, it's time to come in. We have a tornado warning. What do I do? You know what I mean?
Exactly. And then for my mom and dad, it was kind of a cool thing for them, because at the end of the second block of the newscast right before weather, they'd always do a shot in the weather center, and we called it bump shot. And in the bump shot, you would see the back of my head, because I'd be sitting there typing on the computer. And so my mom and dad would tune in religiously. They'd be like, Chicago, I saw your head today. So that was my first time on TV, was, the back of my head.
Oh, that's awesome. So from there, you decided, okay, this is what I want to do. I'm going to go to school. Where did you go to school for meteorology?
I went to the University of Oklahoma, and that's where I got, my BS in meteorology and my BA in journalism. And while I was at OU, which is about an hour and a half drive to Tulsa, where I lived at the time, the TV station, that same one that I had been working for, anytime I was home for spring break or home for summer vacation, they put me back on the payroll. So it was awesome to be able to be studying it at school and at the same time be able to go home. And whenever I was visiting my mom and dad, be able to still kind of immerse myself in it at the TV station. Of course, they would let me practice in front of the green screen, which was great. Also, while I was in college, I was able to be part of a storm chasing project, which was amazing.
No, so cool. I want to do it.
Yeah. Like in more recent history, you've heard of Vortex 2, right?
Yes.
So I was actually part of Vortex 1, the one that was back in 1995, which kind of dates me. But anyway, I was part of Vortex 1. The University of Oklahoma basically applied for a grant from the National Science Foundation to be able to bring on board a bunch of young student scientists that were studying meteorology. So I applied for this program, and I got chosen, and I got to go out sometimes in the P-3 aircraft, which is the same aircraft that's used for hurricane hunting. For this summer in 1995, they actually let the Hurricane Hunter aircraft be loaned to Vortex to try and intercept, not go into tornadoes, but get close enough to tornadoes to be able to detect them on radar. So we kind of would rotate. Sometimes I would be in the aircraft. Sometimes I would be down on the ground. And if you've seen the movie Twister, basically the idea that we were, the storm chasing yahoos going all over Oklahoma and Kansas and all the way up toward New Mexico, sometimes down to Texas, and we just chase storms and hope we would gather data and learn more about how they work. They had these they called them probes, kind of like Toto in the movie Twister, where they would put out these little pieces of equipment they wanted to get swept up into the tornado so that they could get data on, velocity and how strong the winds were in the storms.
Did they have wings
so
on them?
It was really cool.
They had the just
No,
like
I
the
don't.
Dorothy.
They didn't. Oh, yeah. I don't think they had the wings on them. They were just kind of like stationary, and they were actually designed to like hold on to the ground as long as possible before being lofted up, so that they could gather that information, and hopefully not be destroyed in a tornado. But it was just really cool, kind of watching the foremost scientists do their thing. And each morning we go to the National Severe Storms Lab in Norman, Oklahoma, and there'd be a whole bunch of meteorologists that would get together and they'd give a briefing. We think the dry line's going to set up here. We think that the moisture's going to be best there. If temperatures heat up to a certain point, then this is where we need to position our chase teams. And sometimes we'd go driving for 10 or 12 hours and we'd see nothing. And other times we'd be driving and all of a sudden you'd see this amazing field of towering cumulus clouds. I remember being in a hailstorm so big that it basically tore up the windshields of most of the vehicles that were in the storm, and they had to get windshields replaced. It was probably baseball sized. It was out in the Caprock Canyons area of Texas. And I actually have a scrapbook from way back then, with pictures. It was just insane. Here I was, it was so loud you couldn't even hear yourself think. And the whole time I'm like, wow, talk about a research project. I mean, it was just really cool. So, not only did I get the in the classroom experience, but I also got the out in the field, crazier than you can imagine experience. I saw 2 tornadoes during that. And and then after we were done with the project itself, we got to take all that data that was gathered, and each student worked with a mentor to actually create a project that would do further research. So I worked with a scientist named Don McGorman, who was really big into lightning. And so we looked at the polarity of lightning strikes. Are there more positive strikes or are there more negative strikes right before a tornado develops? So some really cool stuff. I was kind of lucky as a college kid, not your typical experience.
That's awesome. I mean, so basically the more CGs that you get, like let's say you get a thunderstorm like we had tonight, which was, I got to tell you, Chicago, the storms we had this evening, I haven't experienced in a couple of years up here living up on Cape Ann. Because usually the water and the marine influence kind of takes the legs out of these storms. But tonight they really held themselves together, and there's a lot of damage reports coming in from this severe weather that we had this evening. But I'll talk to you about that in a minute. But as far when you're talking about lightning, the more intense the lightning gets, is that, like you said, more of a sign that you have rotation and you possibly have a tornado on the ground? Because we had about, I would say for about 20 minutes or so, we had a lightning bolt every second, and we're talking, it sounded like bombs were going off tonight. And then you look at the radar, and it almost looked like there was rotation. But is that a sign of the storm strengthening when you have that constant CGs like you just said?
I honestly, it's been so long since I did my project, I don't even remember exactly what we found. No, I mean, it was so long ago. But what I will tell you is that although they were trying to find some correlation, like what's so interesting about the weather is that I remember we pulled our case study, which was those tornadoes that we intercepted that year, and then we compared them to some other tornado research projects that had been done in previous years. And it's you can try to find something consistent with every one of them, but inevitably storms kind of have a mind of their own. And so even if you think there might be a pattern to it, a lot of times you could be surprised. So I kind of hesitate to say, okay, if you get this, then that's going to happen. It would be more that if you have, obviously the more energy you have in a storm, the more lightning strikes, the more dangerous it can be. But ultimately with tornadoes, it's all about, what in the atmosphere is making a tornado or is making a storm rotate. And then if you get that mid-level rotation, which is called a mesocyclone, what is it that triggers it to actually work its way down at the surface? And it's amazing because even from those days when I was doing all that research, still today, we've come a long way with forecasting tornadoes, but, it's still not an exact science.
There's still, as far as warning systems go, they could. It's really hard to predict when a tornado is going to drop down. I mean, we're lucky to have Doppler radar, to notice the rotation on radar. You see the green and the red returns on the polarization. But you can't be 100% guaranteed. A tornado is going to be dropping down in a tornado-warned storm. So when the National Weather Service, or I believe it's Storms Prediction Center, they're actually out of northern Oklahoma, right? So they put the warning.
And they're the ones.
Go ahead.
They put out the watches, and the warnings are actually issued by the individual storm forecast center. So in your case, it's in Taunton, is where the Boston National Weather Service office is.
Oh, so all the warnings come out of the National Weather Service. Okay.
Yeah, so the warnings come out of the National Weather Service down in Taunton for you, and the watches, like the tornado watch or the severe thunderstorm watch, that comes out of the Storm Prediction Center.
Right. A lot of people, I'm hearing a lot of heat that the National Weather Service has taken because they're not putting warnings out quick enough. We had the Revere tornado. I don't know if you heard about that one.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was pretty wild. If that was 25 miles southeast, that probably would have swung into Gloucester, but it didn't. So we looked out for that one.
Fortunately.
But
or
the
northeast,
warning,
you mean?
Yeah, but the warning system on that, we saw on Doppler, you could see there was a debris signature clearly on the radar that was picking up on. I have all these apps as well as the meteorologists have. Not the best, but it's good to to study and watch them. But a lot of people on Twitter picked it up before the National Weather Service did, and then they were giving the National Weather Service a lot of heat. But you really can't jump the gun and give the National Weather Service a lot of heat because you don't know when this thing's going to drop down. So, you get a severe storm, but it can just pop down 2 or 3 minutes before they see it, and then they notice it, and then they put out the warning. So it's not necessarily that you could even have on radar a tornado showing, because sometimes it may not show because it's rain-wrapped, correct?
Correct, yeah. And, I mean, you look at the velocity data, which is showing the winds within a storm. You see whether they're going toward or away from the radar, which can indicate a mesocyclone, which is that mid-level circulation, and even more, even better indication would be what's called a TVS, which is a tornado vortex signature. And if those things pop up on your radar, and if I don't know what you ask,
I have that. Yeah,
well
I love it.
It's well worth the $10. I always tell people if they ask me like, what do you use as your go-to radar app?
Radar
it's
scope.
That one.
Yep.
It's fantastic. And now that they have level 2 data, which is and level 3 data, you've got so much more information that you can play around with. So I'd say if you're just a layman and you don't need all the bells and whistles, you can easily find a free radar app. But if you're interested in being able to actually look at velocities and really analyze stuff in radar scopes, where it's at. In a lot of instances, the National Weather Service, I can't recall with the Revere situation whether it was an isolated storm or where there were multiple storms within a squall line. Because sometimes what happens is if it's a squall line, those little vortices or areas of rotation will pop up so suddenly that it can literally be between radar scans, because it takes about 6 minutes for one radar sweep to be made. In 6 minutes of time, you could have something spin up within that time and touch down within that time.
Right, exactly, and the radar will miss it. And sometimes, correct me if I'm wrong, but the beam in Taunton sometimes doesn't go out so far to see a storm coming. If it is tornado warned, you have to go to, let's say, National Weather Service in Albany and get pick up the radar beam out there. Or different beams pick up different storms, right? So you don't always get, like you said, that scan. But even closer to home, let's say that the system was down. Well, they're going to have no idea, so everybody in the media is going to be looking at Twitter, and because there's a lot of great enthusiasts on there as well, and a lot of great meteorologists on this. You can get all your information on Twitter. I mean, you know that. Everybody gets all their information on Twitter. And you can,
a lot of the first pictures always come out. You see them on Twitter, like, oh, there's damage, bam.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm always seeing that. Like, Twister is one of my favorite all-time best movies, and I don't know, did they film that right there in Oklahoma, or was it in Kansas?
They filmed portions of it actually at the University of Oklahoma. Parts of the lab were filmed on campus, and there were sections of it that were filmed on campus, and they actually had a red carpet premiere party in Oklahoma City where Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt came and did their meet and greet for so it was a pretty big deal for Oklahoma in general and OU. On the other hand, they kind of made the storm chasers in there look a little silly, And even more so for dramatic effect, cows flying and that kind of stuff. They did embellish for the audience.
Wow. So going to school, you're in college, you're at OU, going to school for meteorology. That's a 4-year college, correct? What was your biggest? Well, did you have any problems as far as studying went? Was there anything that did you get nervous as far as tests went or whatever you did in school? Did you? How did you feel? Did you just go through the whole show, boom bang, and everything was great, or did you find these little side stops where you just had some trouble?
I've always been really lucky. I'm a good student. I studied hard. I was always kind of a good kid. And so I had difficulty, like calculus was really difficult. And it's one of those things where we had to take Calc 1 through 4. And Calc 1, I was like, what is this? Calc 2, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Calc 3, I'm going to die. Calc 4,
right.
Bing, light bulb.
Yep.
Oh, that's what that is. Differential equations? Oh, yeah. All of it's like, it's a weird thing. You spend years going, I have no idea what's going on. This is crazy. It doesn't make sense. And then one day you wake up and boom, it just made sense. It was just like somebody, and all of a sudden I got it. I understood it. And what's interesting, though, is, I took a lot of engineering courses. I took a lot of math, took physics, all types of courses. And at the end of the day, my job as a broadcast meteorologist, I don't take pencil and paper and interpolate and do any type of differential equations or statistics. All of that stuff is, now that we've got these computer models, what I do is I basically look at all the computer model data, interpret it, use a little bit of gut instinct, and then make my forecast based on that, because forecast models have come so far that, nor do I have to go and be like, let me go outside and check my thermometer, because it's all automated. All the stations are already there, and everything's on the internet. So it's so much of the job as a meteorologist has evolved thanks to technology. I mean, in such a good way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Chicago, what do you miss most about New England?
Lobster. Hands down. Oh, maybe clam chowder. And
they have
I caught. It's not the same. They can say they fly it in. It's not the same. Mike's pastry. I mean, it's the food. There is nothing like Boston. I mean, there is no place like the North End. Yeah. It's so awesome. Like, I had the best tiramisu there. I've had the most amazing seafood in Boston. I have so many good memories and so many good friends. And then the other thing that I miss would be how close everything is. Oh, let's go to the mountains. You're at Lake Winnipesaukee. You're up at Killington. You're out at a lighthouse in Maine. You're down on the Cape. I mean, although traffic's severe, it might take you 3 hours to get to Provincetown, but distance-wise, you're like, wow, there's so many things, so close, and there's so many diverse things, which I really loved about Boston. And I think you get all walks of life, and there's, it's just a really cool melting pot, which was great for me because, back in the day, I was still young and still trying to figure out, what I wanted to do and what was interesting to me. And then when you're in Boston, you can try a bunch of stuff. You can experience a bunch of stuff, and it's all there because it's such a cosmopolitan city.
Yeah, absolutely. Boston's a beautiful city. But, I live up here in Gloucester, and if you want good seafood, if you ever come back up to New England, you're going to have to come visit up in Gloucester on Cape Ann. We have the best seafood. It comes right off the boats, fresh, just like Boston. But I have a lot of friends that are fishermen, so I can get it totally real fresh for you. Lobster as well.
Well, we ate in Gloucester a couple of times. We did a whale watch off Gloucester, and we also would go to the memorial from the Perfect Storm. We would go down there, and and I remember having a couple of really good meals up there. And then you also have this amazing beach, as I recall. It was like kind of this hidden beach, and I remember going there and being like, "Wow, this is beautiful."
Oh, which one? Half Moon Beach? Is that the one up Stage 4 Park? Kind of looks like you're in the Blue Lagoon.
Yeah, I think that's it, and it was just stunning.
and it looks right out over the harbor, right? That's below where the cannons are up top. Yeah, it is beautiful. Yeah. I love living on the island. I don't think I'll ever leave this island, ever again. But it's just the weather's really great up here. It's living out on the island. The weather can be different from where it is in Boston. It could be, let's say, it could be snowing in Boston, raining here. It could be blowing 80 miles an hour here and 25 in Boston. It all depends on what's going on as far as the storms go. When you were at Channel 7, did you ever have stage fright when you were up when you first went on at Channel 7, or when you first became a meteorologist and you went in front of the cameras? Did you ever get stage fright? Because I know my first time up in front of the green screen, I was using my wrong hand to point at the direction where the maps were. So it was pretty awful. You ever have anything like that?
Once I was in Boston, I had been doing it long enough that I kind of worked out all the kinks. But my first TV market on air was in Norfolk, Virginia. Yeah. And when I was there, literally, there were times when it was painful. I pull some of the old air checks from that, deer in headlights, seriously. Something would go wrong. And I think over time you relax and you realize you're like, you know what, it's not rocket science. Right. Nobody's going to, drag you off set if you say something wrong. But because I was always like, oh, it's got to be just so, and I was always a perfectionist, and I always tried to do well in school, so here I am, my first job on TV, and if I said something wrong, like meteorologically incorrect, or if I, stumbled, literally I'd just be like, oh, it would be this whole defeatist thing that would get me.
Right.
Or people can be kind of nasty. One email can totally ruin your day, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm over it because I know. I'm like, you know what? The only reason someone sent that email to me was because they were having a bad day. So I don't take it personally. Back when I was a young kid straight out of college,
Yeah. No, it's because you're good and you're doing a great job. And criticism sometimes is good to have. Because it improves your forecasting. It makes you feel more like, oh wow, I'm important. People are saying these mean things about me. You know what I mean?
This is kind of sad. I saved a letter that a viewer wrote to me. I can't remember if it was in Boston. It may have been, but it was. A lot of times, you'll have these people who you know nothing about them, but you'll just read these notes, and sometimes they're just crazy. So I got a letter one time from someone that said, Chicago, you're demented in the head. That's why you can't forecast the weather. And it was really funny. And it was one of those where I'm like, you know what, I can't throw this out. I have to save it. So I still have it somewhere in a box.
Oh, do you?
It was classic.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get everything. And then I'd say now in social media, now that we're so accessible, it used to be you'd have to send me an email or you'd have to send me a letter or call the switchboard and they transfer you back. Well, now you just tweet at me and bam, you're in touch with me.
Right.
So I think it's a lot easier for if you bust a forecast or if, someone doesn't like what you're wearing that day or how your makeup looks. People can just fire at you right away. So,
right.
I mean, it's definitely evolved a lot. But on the same token, I think because of that, and I always kind of counsel newbies in this business, you've got to have, an armor shield around you because you need to realize people will try to tear you down, and you just need to be confident in your skills and who you are and not let that get to you.
Absolutely. I mean, that's well said. I mean, just be yourself and do what you enjoy, and what you love, and then you don't have to worry about what everybody else thinks about you. You know what I mean? Chicago, tell
me,
did you actually, what did you most experience your biggest weather event up in New England? Were you up here for any of the hurricanes?
Not any of the hurricanes. I mean, I can't remember exactly which storms. There were some storms that fizzled before getting to us, but I don't recall ever being in any big hurricanes. But we had some really good nor'easters. I remember anytime it was a really good nor'easter, the station would put up everybody in hotels downtown. And so there were times when we basically have a party the night before a storm because everyone, wasn't going to be able to drive in the next day. So we'd all be at the hotel. We'd be hanging out. Everyone would wake up at the crack of dawn. We'd know we were going to do wall-to-wall coverage. And I remember these times where we would get so much snow that literally I would be knee-deep in snow just to walk across the street from the hotel to Government Center where HDH is. And it was just amazing how much snow you could get out of a storm so quickly. And I remember some of those events we would have thunder snow. And it was really my first time experiencing it because most of the places I had been and worked prior were farther south where it doesn't snow quite as much.
Right.
So there was this one storm where we started seeing lightning show up on radar. And Pete Bouchard and I were both working, on the storm at the time. And we're getting in these reports, and I think it was like from Falmouth and from places down South Shore area, where they were saying that they were getting 3 inches of snow an hour with thunder and lightning.
Absolutely,
and it was just awesome. So
that was new to you.
Definitely, yeah. Boston definitely offers, I would say, the Super Bowl of weather. The fact that middle of summer it can be 65 at the harbor and it can be 90 out in Natick.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I've seen it snow 5 inches of snow in 1 hour in Boston, and I think Jim Cantori from the Weather Channel was the one that was doing the report because he seems to be everywhere when there's thunder and lightning, thunder snows. So he's the thunder snow guy. Have you ever met Jim Cantori?
I think I've met him once, but I don't know him. I'd say from the Weather Channel, my best friend there would be Mike Seidel. He's such a good guy.
Yeah, Mike's a great guy. Mike was up here in Gloucester one time covering a nor'easter. He was getting blown around. Jim Cantori was up here one time covering an Easter. He was getting blown around on the back shore. Myself and my daughter, we spoke with him for a little bit. He was making fun of my old Red Sox hat because I have a Red Sox hat that's like, I don't know, I guess 15, 16 years old, and it was all falling apart. But that's how you can tell I'm a big Red Sox fan. Even though they stink right now.
You still got it, yeah.
I do. I still got it. So the weather in Texas is a lot different than the weather up in New England. You guys are very dry, dry humidity. You don't get that much humidity unless you get a system that comes off the Gulf of Mexico. Tell us what it's been like down there this past summer. I mean, I know it's been hot, but how much precipitation have you guys received down there?
It's kind of weird. We're in the middle of a drought that actually goes all the way back to 2009. So even though we'll get rain and we'll get flooding here in Austin, then it'll be dry for a couple months. So July was a very wet month. And it was kind of across the nation. We had these rare cold fronts that would make it all the way down into South Texas, which never happens. And we'd have highs in the 80s a couple of days in July, which was insane because that never happens either. So July was super wet. Then August, the airport, Austin Bergstrom International, went through the entire month of August with only a trace of rain, which was tied for the driest August on record. And then here we are in September, and we've had a couple of decent little rain events, and there are actually some showers kind of clustered around the Austin area tonight as well with a cold front that's pushing in. So the biggest talk here in Austin is, unlike in other places where you forecast rain and people are like, oh, man, rain. Here you say, and we've got rain in the forecast. They're like, yes, awesome. People are so excited because our drinking water and our recreation water comes from Lake Travis, which is a big lake just northwest of Austin, and Lake Buchanan, which is even farther upstream. And the lake's combined storage right now is at 35%. So, I mean, can you imagine you're looking out at the lake and it's only a third full? I mean, and this is the reality here. So they've actually cut off farmers downstream that have rice and planting and that kind of thing who used to get water from the lake. They no longer supply that because it's so bad. And we've got water restrictions that are stage 3 and stage 4 in some places here in Central Texas. And, where I live, I can only water once a week. So the grass is brown and crunchy, and, and so people literally pray for rain. And the thing that's really exciting here, though, is after seeing this drought that's prolonged and horrendous and all this kind of thing, taking a financial toll on so many people and just making it just not look as pretty as it should. El Nino, we're under an El Nino watch, and the prospects are that we're going to go into a weak El Nino this fall and continue through the winter, which in Texas is great because it means the storm track will make its way through Texas, and typically during an El Nino pattern, we get more storms, which would be more rain. And even more exciting is I always like checking the Climate Prediction Center and their website and seeing what the projections are. For the first time since I've lived in Austin, it was a couple of weeks ago, the Climate Prediction Center came out with its drought outlook for the season. And they said that the drought over Austin was either going to improve or end, which is enormously, that's huge news here. Think that we could get enough rain to actually end that drought, fill the lakes perhaps. That's a big endeavor.
Wow. I mean, yeah, I don't think I could live in a hot, dry environment. I think I definitely need snow in the wintertime. Do you guys get any snow down there in Austin?
Snow is extremely rare. I think we saw a couple of flakes this past winter. Ice, though, is what we would, if it gets cold enough, ice is what develops here. And it's one of those things where it can be 1/100th of an inch of precipitation. But if it hits, we've got a lot of elevated roadways, the highways are elevated. And so if it hits any of those highways, especially during rush hour, there's not enough equipment to get out there and de-ice and deal with it. So everybody spins off the roads. The traffic is ridiculous. People are like, stay at home, don't even bother. They're just not equipped to deal with it like you are there in New England.
Yeah, so you would say that your average temperatures for the wintertime are say what, upper 50s? Is that the lowest you guys go?
Occasionally. I mean, we did get down to, I think the averages are in the 50s. I'm going to pull it up real quick. But I remember we had mid-20s last winter, and I'm a runner. I love going out and running, and because I've lived in cold places, I'm like, no big deal. I just bundled up and I go out running, and my little girl, she's almost 2, I'd bundle her up and put her in the jogging stroller. So many people here would look at me like, are you nuts, lady? And be like, no, it's all good. It's in the mid-20s. I'm going for my morning run. It's such a different mentality, kind of the way you would be in Boston if it were 100 degrees for 6 or 7 straight days. You'd be like, what on earth is going on? Well, for us down in Texas, when it's in the 20s, people start flipping out. All right, so the lowest average low temperature in Austin is 61 degrees in January.
Wow.
Sorry, lowest average high temperature is 61 degrees in January. Lowest average low is 41.
Wow.
So 61 and 41. I mean, that's pretty mild.
Yeah, that's very mild.
And of course, then the highest average high is 98 with a low of 75, and that's in August.
And that's every single day, right?
Mhm. And so it averages out. But for instance, this summer we've had 21 days of triple-digit temperatures. The normal is 13, so we're about a week more than typical. The number of 90-degree days, we're almost to 100 days in the 90s so far. I mean, so it's totally different than New England. Totally.
We've only had, if I'm not mistaken, we've been so behind. Last year we had 14 90-degree days. This year we're starting to get back on track. It's been a warm September. It's actually been a hot September. We're now at 8 officially at Logan International Airport in Boston, and I think we're at 5 here on Cape Ann. Far cry from what it was last year. But again, you can thank the ocean for that, the marine influence and the sea breezes, which
definitely
we love to have because you don't have to go out and buy an air conditioner unit. You can open your window at night and let the sea breeze come in, or take a dip in the ocean. Water temperatures up here, Chicago, are about 68 to 70 on the eastern side of the Massachusetts coast, and on the southeast coast, Cape Cod, off Long Island, they're right around 75 to 80. So that's why they had a lot of those.
Which is why the southeast area. That's why it's better to go swimming there.
That's where all the sharks are. So then the sharks don't want to make it up here to Cape Ann. So that's pretty good. But when you're doing the weather forecasting down in Austin, Do you miss the challenge as far as forecasting go? Because to me, it would seem like you'd be in the weather office and it'd be like, oh, it's the same forecast today. It's the same forecast. You know what I mean? It's just like a real easy forecast for you to make as far as
I'll tell you what,
forecasting goes.
I underestimated Austin. When I came here, I figured I'd be twiddling my thumbs every day.
Yeah.
And yes, to some extent, you can be like, okay, it's going to be 100 degrees again, and we'll have 10% chance of rain. But it's actually a lot more challenging than I had given it credit for. Because obviously, if you're in Boston, you know you're going to have the sea breeze and some crazy stuff, all because of the terrain and the marine influence, and as you mentioned, But here in Texas, there is some elevation. Just west of Austin is what's called the hill country, and they're not exactly tall hills, but there's enough of an elevation change to influence the weather a little bit. And then as you head closer to the Gulf of Mexico, then you get that coastal influence. So even though it's not your typical sea breeze like what you would see coming in off Boston Harbor, kind of a Gulf of Mexico moisture effect where we'll watch sea breeze showers push in, and sometimes they'll make it all the way to Austin. So I've been burnt more than I expected. I figured it would be a lot easier to nail the forecast every day. And there are some days where I'm literally finding myself going, that was kind of not what I expected. So I think anywhere you work, you figure that there are strange microclimates and little curveballs. So I'd say Austin is actually not as dynamic and exciting as New England. But it definitely does offer some challenges for someone like me. It's not San Diego, I guess is the way to put it.
Right. Do you have a choice when you decide to leave the station, or do you have an agent that takes care of when you're moving to another news station that we can be doing the weather with, or is that your own choice?
It varies from person to person. I do not have an agent, but a lot of people do. And what I've always done is I try to make personal relationships with people when I meet them, and you never know who might be a possible boss down the road. So the thing that's been pretty cool is that I've been able to send my my stuff to stations, whenever I'm looking to move, and I've been very fortunate to be able to land at some great places. At this point, we absolutely love Austin. So my goal is, I've got a 6-year-old. Her name's Austin. Ironically enough, we named her when we lived in Minnesota. Who knew? And we spell it like Jane Austen does. It's a little bit different. And then I have an almost 2-year-old who is Zaylee. So our goal is to get these little girls graduated from high school here in Austin, because the schools are so great. And I don't want to leave until then. So I'm like, I need to be here for a good long haul, like 20 years.
Well, that's good. So you don't have to worry about shoveling any snow or anything down there. So you're all set. I mean, that
our air conditioning bills, that's about the only thing.
But you can afford that. So, I mean, seriously, if you think about it, you come home from work, your husband's cooking or you're going to cook, and you got the kids, and you don't have to worry about, they're getting a blizzard up in Boston. Did you hear that? They're getting 2 to 3 feet of snow. Well, that's okay. We don't have to go out and shovel it. We're all set. You know what I mean? But
what I love about Facebook and Twitter is that I can always have that connection with people back in Massachusetts.
Oh, absolutely. You can rub it in. We're getting a winter cane. And it's, 5? Well, here's the thing. They're actually predicting, this is the Farmer's Almanac, and like you said, an El Nino. I don't know if we're forecasting a strong El Nino or a mild, like you said. But right now, I think we're still in a neutral. But, again, they're forecasting a very cold winter up here in New England. So thank your lucky stars you're down there in Austin, Texas. And, not that we want you to sweat down there. Miss you up here in New England. I know a lot of people miss you. And, I'm sure Pete Bouchard and Todd Gross, which is no longer, he's not with WHDH anymore either, I don't think. I saw him on Twitter. I don't know if he's selling homes or something. I don't know if that was, I was friends with him before, but my Twitter account got hacked, so I had to change my name, so I didn't get a lot of my followers back on my friends, because that happens from time to time. But now we have. I don't know if you ever knew Chris Lambert. He's a youngin.
No, I know of him. I'm good friends with Cindy Fitzgibbon, and she had Chris as an intern back when she was still at Fox. And then Chris worked up in Maine, I think at the same station as an intern that I used to have.
Right.
So we've got a lot of common interests, but I've never met Chris. I do know Jeremy Reiner, and then I know Dylan Dreyer had moved on to go to NBC. But it's been a good crop of kids that have been going through there.
Deanna, well, you're still a kid. You're still young, so we won't mention your age on the air. I'll be 42. I'm sorry. I'll be 43, so I don't mind mentioning my age. Right before Thanksgiving, actually. I don't believe
happy early birthday.
Oh, well, thank you. But yeah, no, it's fun to have a lot of meteorological friends in the field. I see that a lot of you guys talk back and forth to each other through stations, which is great. It'll just be like growing up in high school, friends went to different high schools, you kept in touch with them. I mean, it's always great to have some source to go back to, some friends, all over the place. And I know Pete Bouchard was probably a great friend of yours. Todd Gross as well. And then you probably miss everybody at the new station. I don't know how many people you knew back then, but you're happy down in Texas now.
I am. It's treating me well. And we went back to New England, not this summer, but let's see, 2 summers ago. And I stopped by the station. It was just so much fun to see everybody, like Andy Hiller, who I adore, and lots of the same people were there, like behind the scenes people.
Yeah.
A lot of the on-air folks have moved on up in the world, like take Jeff Glory, who I used to do weekends with, who's now at CBS, and Phil Lipoff, who now is working over at CBB. Like there's been a lot of people that have walked through the doors at HDH who really like gone and done great things. And I still have tons of Facebook friends from HDH that I still keep in touch with that way. So it's a good group.
What's your goal? Where do you want to end up after Austin, after your kids graduate, et cetera? And do you want to be on prime time? Do you want to start your own show? You're gonna. Is there anything that you're gonna write? Do you want to write a book?
What's so crazy is at one point I thought my destiny was going to be working at the network. But then I had the opportunity to do it. When I was working in Minnesota, I was working at an ABC station, and anytime Sam Champion was on vacation for about a year, they would call me and they would have me fill in. And so I really enjoyed like going out to New York and tasting that and working at the network. But then at that point we just had one child, but we wanted to have another, and it really dawned on me. I'm like, you know what? You've got a choice. You need to either choose being married to your work or being married to your husband and being the mom that you want to be. And so that's really what made me decide that local news is my passion, because I can still be a good mom and a present mom and wife at the same time as still having an awesome job. So I always tell people, I'm like, I'm a weather geek. The first thing I do when I wake up every morning is tweet out a weather update on my work account. And the last thing I do before I go to sleep typically is something about weather. And if there are ever storms popping up that warrant, my attention, doesn't matter where I am, what I'm doing, even if I'm on vacation, you'll see me tweeting. And it's not from the Chicago Windler account that you and I chat on. It's from my work account. Because I figure anybody that's following me from Boston or from Minnesota or from Oklahoma or from Virginia or some other place I work probably isn't that interested in knowing about the severe thunderstorm warning here in Austin, Texas. So that's why I've got 2 separate accounts. But I got to tell you, I think my passion is just, I want to be able to retire from KI, to retire here in Austin. And because it's strange, it just clicks with me. I love it that much. But never say never. This is a crazy business.
That is awesome. We're almost running out of time. I want to thank you for coming on my show tonight. You were a great guest. It was I'm honored to have you. I hope everything goes well down there in Austin, Texas for you, and we can keep up on Twitter as far as weather goes and just friendship. So I want to thank you so much for coming on my show tonight.
Sure thing, and thank you so much for inviting me. I got to tell you, you are very easy to talk with.
Well, thank you so much. It's what my friends tell me, or my producer actually tells me I'm a natural, but I just take it in stride, and I try not to get too carried away or too nervous, so I try to keep it on the low end.
And on my perspective, I miss that accent. So hearing you, I'm just like, oh, New England, Boston, I love you.
Well, thank you again so much, Chicago, and I'd love to have you again sometime.
Yeah, just holler.
All right, great. I'll talk to you later. Have a good night.
Sounds good. Thanks, you too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Well, guys, that was Chicago Wendler. I tell you, she's a just a great person. If you ever got a chance to meet her, WHDH, great weather forecast. Now she's down in Austin, Texas, living her dream. I'd love to live my dream. Somebody give me a weatherman job, will you? Put me in front of the TV set. I'm good looking. I think I can do it. Yeah, but you got to have a degree, and I don't have that degree, and I'm going to be 43. But you know what? I'm not going to give up because I'm going to go get that friggin' degree. All right, let's get to the weather. It's been crazy around here in Gloucester tonight. My friend Mark Arvilla from Paranormal Hangover and Lauren Sheridan were reporting from Weather Storm Villa Casa Storm Tower 1 earlier tonight, letting me know that the screen was turning green. I've also had reports come in on Twitter, on Facebook, all over Gloucester, of people putting reports of tables being blown off, their third floors, trees being snapped at the tops and being thrown on power lines. This tree got struck by lightning. This power pole went down. Power lines down all over the city. Mark tells me we got hail coming down. Dave tells me we got branches coming down. I can just keep going here on Facebook right now as the storm reports come in. Hold on one second. Amy, this is fun. Oh, we got a fire in Riverdale from a lightning bolt. Power lines went down. People heard sirens. I tell you, the winds were crazy for a little while. It was raining cats and dogs. My daughter and I were up on the rocks watching the storm. I called my friend Anthony Siciliano on the phone. I said, Anthony, we got a wall cloud. I got Mark calling me, telling me there's a green sky. I know, Mark, it's gnarly. It's pretty damn cool. And then we got this other cloud rotating out over the city. The sky was turning black, and then round 2 came in, got really windy. We had nickel-sized hail that hit me in the head, and I thought it was a big raindrop, and it hurt like hell. So that's the kind of night it was tonight. We actually had a severe thunderstorm. It was probably the worst storm I've seen in a couple of years. Trees down again, power lines down. There are reports of power outages throughout the city. We have our power here in East Gloucester. And I'm sure I'm still getting damage reports coming in over Facebook. Tree down, transformer blew in Riverdale. Okay, Essex Ave's shed was hit by lightning. Oh, and my friend Mikey Stevens shows me all these videos a little while ago. Mikey, thank you so much. Mikey was up in Ipswich. He filmed a tree that was down on top of a car in the road, and there was a car to the tree, and there was actually occupants in the tree. And power lines down. He got out on the video. You can go to my Facebook, see the video. And he went to see if those people were okay. They were okay. My prayers and thoughts go to those 2 girls that were struck by lightning in Ipswich tonight on Cranes Beach. God be with you. My prayers and thoughts and wicked weather is with you, girls. I hope you all get better. They're at Beverly Hospital right now. And this has just been one hell of a friggin' show. So I'm glad you came tonight. Next week, I got Rob Goutreau on my show. And we're going to talk weather and ghosts. It's going to be so much fun. I want to thank all my listeners out there tonight. It's been a hell of a show. It's been a hell of a storm. What a way to throw out summer and go right into fall, and then we got a cold winter coming up. We don't want to talk about that now, but maybe I'll talk about that with Rob Goutreau. So I'm running out of time. I am down to exactly 48 seconds, and you know what? I'm going to eat up the whole second by second. going back to storm damage reports. We got a report of a tree down on the back shore. Winds were clocked at 65 miles per hour. Wow. That was on Eastern Point. I wouldn't doubt it. Definitely, we gusted past 60. There were 2 tornado warnings today. Let's get to that quick. There was a tornado warning earlier today for western Essex County. That was for Lowell, Tewksbury, Dracut. A lot of damage up in those areas. There was a tornado warning for northern Worcester County. There was also a tornado warning for southeast New Hampshire. Oh, it's been a crazy wild day. Thank you all for coming. I got 8 seconds to go. I'm going to go with a bang. I'll see you next week at 8 p.m. with Rob Goutreau. Have a great night. Bye-bye.